You are standing next to an old man on the bank of a farm pond in rural Ohio, and he has not moved in 11 minutes. No depth finder, no tackle box with $40 of lures organized by color. He has a cane pole, a length of hand-twisted line, and a bait he mixed in his kitchen last night from 3 ingredients that cost him nothing. He is not waiting. He is reading. And in the time it takes you to wonder what he is looking at, he lifts the pole, sets the hook, and pulls a largemouth bass out of the water that would have made you drive to the store for better gear. This is not a story about luck, and it is not a story about one old man. Before 1950, this kind of knowledge was ordinary. It was passed down through farm kitchens and creek banks and early morning walks to the water. 7 specific rules, none of them sold in a store. None of them printed on a product label, all of them working. The average American fisherman today spends over $600 a year on gear and leaves empty-handed on the majority of his trips. His grandfather, fishing with a fraction of what he owned, rarely came home without a bucket worth keeping. Something changed, something specific, and it did not happen by accident. Stay with me. Inside a box of farming records picked up at an estate sale in rural Pennsylvania, there was an old almanac, 1938. Tucked near the back was a handwritten sheet of paper, folded once, slightly water-stained, written in a tight and careful hand. At the top, the title read, "What a Man Needs to Know Before He Wets a Line." Below it, a numbered list, 7 items, no brand names, no products. Everything on that list described something you could do, observe, or prepare using nothing but your own body, your own land, and your own 2 eyes. Every single item on that list still works today. Here is what it said. The first item read, "Know the temperature before you choose the bank." Pre-1950 fishermen did not walk to the nearest accessible bank and drop a line. They read the water first, specifically temperature. Not with a thermometer, with their forearm. They would kneel at the bank and lower a bare arm into the water slowly, angled down, moving through multiple depth layers. What they were feeling for was a thermocline, a layer where the water shifted from warm to noticeably cooler within a few inches. Fish congregate just above that cold boundary where metabolic activity is highest and food aggregates most densely. Rural Extension Program field notes from the 1930s documented this practice consistently across farming communities in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. Experienced fishermen using this method showed significantly higher catch rates than recreational anglers choosing spots by sight. A depth finder tells you the shape of the bottom. Your forearm tells you where the fish are comfortable. No purchase required. The second item was 3 words, "Watch the moon." Pre-war fishermen did not show up at the water at random hours. They fished in specific 90-minute windows tied to lunar position. When the moon is directly overhead or directly opposite, the gravitational pull on the water column is at its strongest. Barometric pressure shifts slightly. Aquatic insect activity increases. Fish enter short. Unpredictable feeding periods of dramatically elevated activity. Old almanacs carried lunar fishing tables as standard content, printed beside planting guides and weather predictions as equally obvious practical facts. Ask yourself why that information disappeared. Tackle shops sell the idea that the right gear determines success. A fisherman who understands lunar feeding windows needs better timing, not better tackle. And by the late 1950s, as sporting goods advertising spend increased by over 400% in a single decade, the magazines that once printed lunar fishing tables were running full-page rod advertisements instead. The connection is not subtle once you see it. The third secret was the one I had to read twice. Before synthetic attractants existed, serious fishermen used a specific plant-based preparation on their hands before touching any bait or line. The purpose was to eliminate human scent at the molecular level. Fish have an olfactory system of extraordinary sensitivity. A catfish has taste receptors distributed across its entire body surface. It is, in a very real sense, tasting the water it swims through. Human skin oils and sweat compounds are detectable in water at concentrations invisible to any instrument a consumer could buy. The natural preparation came from a plant that grew wild across most of rural America. It was referenced in early Native American fishing practice, noted in colonial-era trapping manuals, and treated in pre-war sporting press as something you simply did before handling bait, standard practice. The industry now sells you synthetic masking agents, bottled, branded, priced at a margin that keeps the shelf stocked. The natural method does not just mask human scent. It introduces a compound that fish associate with the natural environment. Something that reads as belonging in the water. The industry cannot bottle the absence of a threat, so they bottle something else and charge you for it. The fourth secret was about still water reading, and this is the one that made me understand that what I was looking at was not a scattered list of tips. It was a complete observational system. Pre-1950 fishermen could read the surface of a still pond and locate fish before casting a single line. 3 visual indicators read simultaneously. First, shadow pattern disruption. Fish holding near the surface disturb the mirror reflection of the sky on still water. In early morning light, a school of fish below the surface appears as a slight mottling or darkening of the reflected image. Not a splash, not a visible ripple, but a subtle visual interference visible from 20 yards back from the bank. Second, surface film break. Water carries a natural surface film created by surface tension and microscopic organic particles. Where fish are actively feeding below, the disruption of their movement creates tiny, irregular breaks in this film, drifting outward from the holding zone. Third, insect congregation pattern. Insects aggregate on still water in patterns that correspond directly to underwater thermal and chemical gradients. A tight cluster of surface insects above apparently featureless water is responding to something beneath it that the fish already found before you arrived. The Isaac Walton League documented this methodology in its regional field guides throughout the 1930s and 40s. They treated surface reading as a basic competency, something learned in the first few seasons before a man concerned himself with tackle selection at all. None of it requires a purchase. All of it requires attention. Here is the pattern. All 4 of these secrets share one defining characteristic. None of them can be sold. None of them generate a margin. And that is exactly why, between 1948 and 1962, all 4 quietly disappeared from the mainstream fishing conversation. 3 secrets remain. The next one has laboratory evidence behind it. In 1984, at a specialized fisheries research facility, data was collected that confirms exactly why a hand-braided natural line will consistently outfish a $100 spool of premium monofilament. The 5th secret is natural line conditioning. When modern monofilament moves through water containing dissolved minerals, which describes virtually every lake and creek in the country, it develops a measurable electrostatic surface charge. To a fish, whose sensory organs detect the tiny electrical pulses of a struggling insect or dying minnow, that plastic line creates a faint but consistent buzz of danger. It does not match the electrical profile of wood, vegetation, or anything that belongs in the water. Pre-1950 fishermen conditioned their natural fiber lines using a 2-stage process that sounds simple but is advanced molecular physics. First, soaking the braided line in a mixture of crushed walnut hulls and water for 48 hours. The tannins bond to the organic fibers and create a surface that is electrically inert. Second, rubbing the line with rendered animal fat and beeswax, changing its refractive index so that it does not catch and reflect light underwater. To a fish's eye, a conditioned natural line looks like floating organic debris. It looks like it belongs there. The industry cannot sell you a walnut hull soak, so they sell you invisible fluorocarbon and hope you never look at the data showing fish can feel the electrical signature of that plastic 6 feet away. The sixth secret is the depth and hold rule. Most modern fishermen think in terms of the bottom or the surface, but fish rarely live at either extreme. They live in the middle of the water column at a specific depth that shifts by the hour based on oxygen levels and temperature. Pre-war fishermen found this feeding shelf using nothing but a piece of weighted bread. They would squeeze a small piece of bread around a stone and drop it into the water, watching not just the fall, but how the bread clouded the water at different depths. At the layer where biological activity peaks, where oxygen and temperature are optimal, the bread dissolves more rapidly, creating a faint white mist in the water column. That is the feeding shelf. They would mark the depth and set the bait exactly there. While the modern fisherman drags his lure through dead water at the bottom, watch the man with the cane pole holds his bait exactly where the fish are actively feeding. It costs you the price of a single slice of bread, and it makes the entire lake readable. The seventh secret is not a technique, it is an understanding of fish time. We have all been told the same thing. The best fishing is early morning and late evening, the golden hours. But commercial fishing fleets, the operations whose mortgages depend on catching thousands of pounds of fish every single day, do not care about sunrise or sunset. They fish based on barometric pressure. The almanac list called it simply, fish the falling glass. Fish have a swim bladder, a gas-filled organ that maintains their buoyancy. When atmospheric barometric pressure drops ahead of a weather front, the internal pressure on that organ is relieved. The fish feel a sudden surge of physical energy and enter an instinctive feeding frenzy. Their biology is telling them a storm is coming and they need to fuel up now. The industry promotes morning and evening fishing because that is when the average working man is available to go to the lake. It is a marketing schedule designed around the human workday, not the fish's biology. The man who understands the falling glass fishes at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday because he saw the barometer move. In those 90 minutes before the rain starts, he catches more than the golden hour fisherman catches all week. Commercial operations have used pressure-based timing for 60 years. They just never told the recreational market. When you bring all 7 of these together, you realize we did not lose a few tricks. We lost a unified system of observation. Every item on that 1938 almanac page describes a man who was an active participant in his environment, not a consumer passing through it. The temperature read, the lunar window, the scent mask, the surface reading, the line conditioning, the depth shelf, the falling glass. None of it requires a store. All of it still works this week on any body of water in North America. The men who carried this knowledge were not professionals. They were farmers and laborers and fathers who fished to feed their families. They never came home empty-handed because they were not fighting fish biology. They were working with it. Meanwhile, the modern industry convinced an entire generation that empty buckets meant insufficient gear, not insufficient knowledge. They sold us back our own hobby, now one plastic piece at a time. You are the type of person who notices these patterns. That curiosity is your greatest asset. So subscribe and turn on notifications because the next video covers a method so specific and so well documented that it was briefly included in a 1943 military survival manual before being scrubbed from the 1954 revision. I found the original in a state archive. What it describes will change the way you look at your own property forever. I will see you there.